Welcome to the panel on the post-pandemic workplace. As we emerge from the pandemic, many of us will be facing very different kinds of workplaces than we did 2.5 years ago. Companies like Shopify and Airbnb have announced a work from anywhere policy, while other companies are either welcoming employees back to the office or embracing some kind of hybrid model. Many other employers are still experimenting with some combination to figure out what will work for them in the future. This panel will discuss some of the challenges in overcoming returning to the office jitters, how to maintain culture among remote employees, how to support employee engagement among staff in these varied workplace styles, and explore the new demands created for recruiting and onboarding students and grads into these new workplaces. Joining me to discuss these issues are Ariane Lamy, Program Manager, Campus and Diversity Recruitment for SNC-Lavalin, Mehek Shoaib, Senior Manager, Early Talent Engagement for CIBC, and Whitney Parrott, International Field Selection, Talent Acquisition for Chick-fil-A. Welcome to the panel.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well, let's start with the basics. With mandates lifted across Canada, we've seen a shift in the work environment, with different employers taking different approaches from completely remote to back to the office to some sort of hybrid. I'd like to go to each of you to hear about your company's plans and what the challenges and considerations were in making the decision. Maybe we can start with you, Mehek.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mary. Happy to be on this panel along with some of the other panelists. This has been an ongoing question, pre-pandemic, going back into the workplace. And I feel like a lot of different organizations implemented different models based on what works for them, right? As for CIBC, I've definitely seen the organization and leadership take a very thoughtful and organized approach when it came to return to office. So we've actually implemented a hybrid approach and had a staggered return plan depending on the different line of business that you're at, right? And we did this because we wanted to ensure that our employees were comfortable while keeping their health and safety, paramount, right? Also making sure that there weren't any tech concerns when returning into office. So to kind of just, summarize, our teams were assigned different hybrid levels, which indicated the number of days they would be in office based on the type of work that they were doing. So for example, myself being in HR, we go into office once a week. We sit on our assigned floors and we work together in a collaborative manner. And I'm super, super impressed with the level of thought, care, and safety that's gone into the return plan. And you kind of get best of both worlds. So you can't go wrong with that.
Ariane, how was your experience and what were your decisions?
Thank you again for inviting me to that panel. Really interesting subject. At SNC-Lavalin, we decided to go with an hybrid model as well. So the hybrid is based on the operational needs. So of course, if we have people on the side, they will need to go on the side each day. But if you are at the office, then you go when you need to collaborate with each other, when you have meetings together. So it's just easier to connect with other people in person. So it's really on the operational side that decide how much you go to the office and how many days you stay at home. Since we are all well organized to be at home, and we have a lot of collaboration tools as well. So it's possible to do so externally. We continue to evolve. So in terms of policy, etc., we just launched our new work from everywhere on the planet type of policy. So we have offices around the globe. So it's possible for people to go work elsewhere as long as the cybersecurity and health and safety of the person is respectful.
And Whitney.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having us here. It seems like a hybrid approach is a popular one because we too at Chick-fil-A have a hybrid model. We are a super relational organization and culture. And so as our team considered how do we prioritize safety and health as well as people's comfort levels, but also really protect that relational and personal care that we have as a part of our culture. Similar to what Mahek, you were sharing, there's a lot of really thoughtful, slower approach on decision making. So we noticed several other Atlanta-based companies were making decisions almost a year out when the pandemic hit, and Chick-fil-A was a little bit slower to come around to what was really best for us. And so what we've landed on recently, starting in this past January, was something that we've called flexible future. So really, it's a combination of giving the employee the choice that empowers them to continue with some of those rhythms and cadences that they've developed in the pandemic, a workplace, being at home some, but then also being in the office, which will typically be about 8 to 10 days a month. And so employees are given the option based around some things that we've landed on a term of cultural cornerstones. So what are those things that really keep our culture vibrant, whether that's things of, collaboration, connecting personally, coaching for sure, and then any community developing items. We've got some guidelines around, who we would suggest coming in versus being at home. And so employees have that choice to decide, do I need to be in person for this event or can I take it from home? And so we've landed there and it's been working really well so far.
Well, it's so interesting that you've all sort of landed in this some sort of hybrid model, but they're all quite different. I'm curious as to whether your companies had a plan for dealing with, or whether you encountered employees who might have been nervous about coming back into the office environment, after going through years of a global pandemic. Mahek, maybe we can start with you. What did you find, and were there policies or plans put in place to address this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a combination of emotions that everyone was going through. There was excitement, there was anticipation, there was nervousness. I think the excitement stemmed from wanting a change of scenery, wanting that human connection, enhanced collaboration. But there was also nervousness, right? And a fear of kind of having that switch in routine, commuting, being in a room full of people. But I think overall, as a department, as an organization, and even, leading my team, I think we really emphasize transparency, communicating comfort levels, and making sure that we're flexible, right? Because everyone is in different situations at home, and we need to be able to adapt and adjust and accommodate to those needs. But overall, I feel, my team has adjusted quite well. There's lots of happy faces when we're in the office. There's constant chatter about the commute, getting lunch, working together in a team setting. Not going to lie, though, the first couple of weeks were a little bit slower as we were just, navigating the workspace, getting comfortable with our new routine. But we've definitely embraced the new way of working.
And Ariane, what did you see? Like, how did your team adapt to this new way of working?
Yeah, so security, it's part of our value at SNC. So throughout the pandemic, we had a lot of communication around how important it is to stay safe and to communicate if you have any anxiety to go back to the office. We had committee to create that sense of being safe and ensure that everyone's feel comfortable to go back to the office if they need to. So as well as on the site, of course, they continue throughout the pandemic to do their work on site. So we've created a lot of safe and security environment and committee to have these kind of exchange between expert and people that will be working with other in person.
And Whitney, you emerged quicker from the pandemic in terms of opening up offices earlier than in Canada. Your head office is located in the United States. Did you encounter anything like that regarding, employees being somewhat hesitant or a little worried about coming back, or was it really embraced by the team?
Yeah, I would say there was a combination of both. People came with different comfort levels. And I think that Chick-fil-A's response was really gracious and understanding, keeping health as a priority. So the number of just different elements within the office space that were changed to adjust to people not being in such close contact with each other, different sanitation methods that were going out and being really all over the office, people with masks, even certain protocols and guidelines that limited how many people were able to be in a room together and if they were required to have masks and, all these different things with that health in mind that was both, I think, gave a level of comfort to those who are a little bit more anxious about returning. But then two was a little bit, could be challenging for some who are really ready to embrace that in-person space where they're able to commune in the way that they were used to. So I think we had a combination. I think overall, for us, it was a pretty good return. It was phased out slowly, similar to what some of you all are saying here. But what was helpful is that employees had a really large window to prepare. So the mindset and the mental expectation of we're going back in, I have space to change and to coordinate childcare or change the rhythm of my schedule, get all of those things up in line and really mentally prepare for going back was something that we had. And then there's a kind of transparency as well around, what people are different on the spectrum of comfort. And so, if people prefer to meet outdoors, we have several outdoor workspaces if the weather permits and more distanced or in an open space, things of that nature. There's a large embrace around individuals' comfort levels.
Well, I was curious, Ariane, when you mentioned that you also embraced a work from anywhere policy for your global operations. It really means that you can enlarge the pool of potential candidates for recruitment for those that are working virtually. Has this impacted the way that you recruit, or do you anticipate it will?
We will be, of course, more open to an international recruitment. We do have some concern in terms of right to work. So we need to be careful around it. We just launched that policy. So we want to encourage people to go back seeing their family if they have family around the world, to continue to be more social and to meet with each other. So that's the key point of that policy, actually. So we didn't see any new ways of recruiting right now, but we can expect some in the future, of course. In terms of recruitment right now, we are continuing to be focused on Canadian schools and people that have the right to work in Canada. But as soon as they are hired at SNC, they can work from elsewhere at time to time.
Wow, that's fascinating. There's been a lot of media coverage on the question of whether new remote or hybrid workplaces where there's remote workers have an impact on productivity and whether it might have an impact on maintaining employee engagement. Mayhek, maybe you could address that. Like, how did you look at that issue and work with the policies that you've embraced?
Yeah, I feel like productivity, everyone kind of sets their own routine to make sure they're maximizing productivity. But I think one thing the pandemic has really taught us is the value of well-being, right? Like, I think back in the day it was a benefit, but now it's a top priority. So ensuring that you are being productive, but encouraging breaks, encouraging walks, encouraging time away from your desk, right? And I think where it comes to engagement, we had to pivot a little bit and, be innovative and creative as to how are we getting the team together virtually? How are we making sure there's a sense of connection? So I think from an organization and a team's perspective, we had certain people on the team that were dedicated to, team socials or engagement. And then also having some training modules in places, providing that enhanced training on how to make sure that, you're keeping distractions at a minimum, or you're getting the support and guidance from your leaders when you're not understanding something, right? So definitely a lot of things in place, and it's banking is a team sport, we like to say here. So I think as long as everyone's working together towards a goal, productivity varies, right?
And Whitney, what did you discover in this journey that you've had with your organization?
Yeah, we actually experienced something that I think was opposite of what was anticipated. So pre-pandemic, we were a fully in-person organization and workplace. And so moving completely online, I think there were some that thought, oh, how is this going to work and how will it impact productivity? And what we saw is that with coming into the office and then going home and being in two separate physical spaces, there's a little bit more separation between work and life. And we all know that there's more to life than work. But what we saw happen with our employees is that because that computer was right there in an office or in your living room, people were actually spending a lot more time working than they had previously. So they were kind of going in this overdrive mode. One, to respond to the volume of work that was there. Our company actually, we increased in size over the pandemic and grew abundantly, which I know isn't most of people's experience. But so that created this, the demand for people to be online a little bit more. And what we noticed is that, hey, people were burning out quickly. They were engaged from hey, we're here actually working and engaged in the work, but getting less engaged in like fulfillment of that. And so we put out several different things to really encourage take time off. You were rewarded for taking time off. You were given additional hours to take off for PTO. Just a lot of, hey, we really want you to rest. We want you to be able to have that balance that we find is appropriate. There's not an expectation for you to be working around the clock like you are. And so we actually experience kind of the opposite of hyper productivity rather than that lesser engagement from our team.
And Ariane, your experiences.
Yeah, so a bit of both, actually. At the beginning, a lot of people was just not stopping working. So we need to put in place some well-being measure, a well-being website, and it's been 2 years, so there's a lot of Zoom fatigue. We heard that word a lot, but what does that mean? It's exactly what Whitney was saying. It's people just need to get in person at some point, need to see people in 3D, need to exchange and brainstorm around the coffee with a person instead of doing 5 cassettes through Zoom, and to organize some, we're gonna work in team, everyone's get their cell phone and we're gonna walk together. So we need to have both. So I think the hybrid model will help us actually to create that balance between high productivity, but take care of yourself as well. So I think we are going in the right way with the hybrid model instead of fully continue to be fully in person or continue to be fully virtually. So at least people who wants to meet each other will be able to do so, and the well-being will just be more and more on each lips in the next couple of years.
Well, I'm curious to hear from all of you what the biggest difference seems to be related to your in-office workplace in the pre-pandemic years compared to what it is in the 2022. I mean, when you're back in the office, how are things changed? Or, if you have that sort of insight into what this entire experience, how it's impacted your in the office experience for the staff, other than having a hybrid model. Do you notice any other things? Is there things that sort of surprised you in terms of your interaction with other employees? Mehak, maybe you could start us on that discussion.
Yeah, I feel the biggest change personally was just being cautious of people's comfort level, right? Back in the day, I would see, my team, I would give them a big hug. I'm a hugger, just go sit by their desk, chat with them. But now you have to keep a certain amount of distance. You have to, do you shake their hands? Do you not shake your hands? Even in like, if you're doing a recruitment event, right? You have to maintain that distance. You're wearing a mask. So I think all those things, now they're programmed into our brain, and you have to be extremely cautious of, you could be at a different comfort level, but the person in front of you is at a different comfort level. So just being mindful of that, asking questions, right? Is this okay? Is that okay? Are we, taking different approaches when it comes to different events and things that are taking place? I think that would be the biggest change. And then personally, I would say the switch from work from home to going into office, definitely the outfit, right? Comfortable in PJs at home, and then you're doing this dress up routine. But I think that's the excitement too of going back to office.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a whole closet full of clothes I haven't worn for 2 years. But Whitney, what have you noticed?
Yeah, I've noticed a couple of things. I think one would be, we'll talk about a front door. Okay. So the front door is opening and closing less, but it's rotating more. And so I think what I mean by that is, because employees are asked to be here about 8 to 10 times a month, there's less people in the building. And previous to the pandemic, this office space, we have about 3,000 people that come in regularly. And so it is busy, energetic, a lot going on. You're passing and rubbing shoulders with people constantly. You know more people and have more relationships than you do now, when there's about 25% of staff on campus at one time. So less people, which the energy level, or just kind of the vibe, if you will, the environment is a little bit different. But then that door is rotating more throughout the day. And so what we would see beforehand is, you were up with that commute, dressed and ready to go in those more formal clothes, and you were here, 8:30 to 5 or after. So you were dedicated for that full day. And that was a bit of the expectation and the norm. But now we're seeing people coming in at different times of the day, leaving at different times of the day, whether that's to take something virtually, miss, a commute or traffic. And just that flexibility, I think, has given people a lot of just freedom to have that work integration a little bit healthier, of leaving when you need to, working a little bit later, or working remotely part of the day and coming in person. And so I think that's some of the biggest changes that we've noticed from an experience in the workplace, I would say.
And Ariane?
So we choose at SNC the time to being back to the office to change our work model as well. So we are now under open space hoteling type of work. So we really see how much social interaction was missing us in the past 2 years. But it's like people are feeling guilty to just take a coffee with someone. And prior to the pandemic, everyone was taking 20 minutes at the beginning of the day just to know what happened yesterday, etc. The difference also is that now we are asking about people's pet, how they were doing, since they were part of each meeting for 2 years. So it's more interactive, it's more social. People are really more happy to see each other when they see at the office. Of course, like Whitney, because of the hoteling, because of the hybrid model, there's less and less people that you can meet, but at least the team book a day together and we just decide, okay, so next week we're gonna go this day, and we are just really happy to see each other. We are continuing to do a lot of work virtually, even if you are in person at the office, because it's not everyone who is there. So I think there's a lot of more respect as well on each people have their rhythm, and we'll go back at some point together. So yeah, there's just more smile and more happiest social event.
And have you found that it's impacting the way you're recruiting? This change in your workplace, it must have had some influence on the manner in which you're bringing people into the organization, recruiting them, and also onboarding them. Mehak, maybe you could fill me in on what your experience is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, pre-pandemic, most of the events were done in person, right? And then the pandemic happened, and we had to adapt and we had to completely switch everything virtually. Now, the beauty about that is we were able to engage a lot more people from all different parts of Canada. So that expanded our talent pool, which allows us to hire the best of the best people and also intentionally be inclusive, right? So I think that was great. It also, there was a drive and increase in creativity and innovation as to how are we keeping these students engaged? How are we allowing them to attend our events and actually, go to the networking piece and come out of their shell and out of their comfort zone? So a lot of positive changes, I would say. Of course, then there's, we did see a lot of Zoom fatigue or, virtual fatigue that was happening from the students' perspective. So we had to be mindful of that too. So a lot of different changes in the way that we recruit, but overall, I think from a positive standpoint, it's allowed us to engage more students, hire better talent. And then as for the onboarding, I think a lot of different organizations were kind of figuring it out. It was like just in time they were figuring it out. So, sometimes the tech onboarding was delayed. But a lot of different companies, as we were progressing through it, took some key learnings, then implemented it for the next work term, right? And now we're at a space where everything is planned so far in advance that, students on their first week of onboarding have their tech set up, have all their, leaders that they need to be, the teams that they're working on. Everything is done in a systematic approach now, but it was definitely, key learnings throughout. But I think we've adapted quite well to the new way of working.
And Whitney, any changes in the way that you do your recruitment?
Yeah, I think very similar to what Mehak was sharing, a lot of that same experience. So a broader reach, a lot faster engagement because you could connect with someone very quickly. You could sign up for an event 48 hours beforehand and attend in the same way that you would attend, if you hadn't signed up. Whereas beforehand, you're booking a flight potentially, you're traveling, there's a deadline. And so that actually opened up this opportunity to be more involved or to be more at more events, sometimes simultaneously, a couple in one day, because you're connecting online versus physically being present. So we certainly saw that. I think something else that we're still experiencing and as talent marketplace as a whole, I think it's trending in this direction, is we're putting more energy into sourcing and finding that has been giving us a really great return on some pretty competitive candidates. And so more time on those platforms sourcing people and those more passive candidates that typically we would be spending time in person in those recruiting events. We also turned a lot of our interviews online and virtual. As many did, it was our only option there. And I think that's to stay, at least for a piece of our interview process. We'll continue to keep finals in person as we're able. But doing that also is enabling us to interview more people, or perhaps, have more margin in the employee's day to be able to have that further reach. And so I think though challenging because of the fatigue or because of, really the sometimes felt awkwardness for the talent, the job seeker, of feeling uncomfortable across the screen. Those things have been challenging, but overall pretty positive things that going online has really brought to the recruiting world from my perspective.
And Ariane.
So I'm gonna piggyback on Whitney. So all our recruiting process will be done virtually. So actually, it's helped us being more rapid and more flexible. So people are always more available if you are booking 1 hour in their agenda for an interview virtually, instead of, you need to come to downtown and you need to find a parking, and then you need to register yourself at the reception, etc. So all our process are more faster now because of the virtual turn. And we see that students and new grads want to see us again in person. So they had also the Zoom fatigue and being following their courses online. So they want to go back in person, and we saw some less and less participation at each information session that we were doing virtually, and people were asking us, when are you gonna go back on campus to do some training or to present your company or one job. So we are eager to next fall to go back on campus and doing that kind of stuff, but also bringing the virtual stuff, the process to be able to get faster and to have a better candidate experience as well.
So a sort of a hybrid model as well in your recruitment. That's so very interesting. I wanted to ask you if you, first of all, I guess if you have any final thoughts about the future of the workplace that you want to leave with our audience in terms of any advice you might want to give, and also kind of to turn your mind to whether there was anything about the past couple of years and this transition that gives you hope about your company's workplace, or what work will be in the future that inspires you in some way. Mehek, let's hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the future of the workplace, I would just say from this whole experience, and as we, continue to move forward and live this new world of normal, for employers, I would just say, lead with empathy, be transparent, have open communication, because at the end of the day, we, from an HR perspective, and from a CIBC perspective, we care about our people, right? People first. So you have to be supportive. You have to make sure that they're comfortable, they're feeling safe, and they are included in the dialogue, right? So lead with that. And I also think that having an agile mindset is very, very important. We need to be prepared to adapt constantly in a changing environment, right? And for employees and, just people within the organization, give yourself grace. Don't beat yourself up like if you're not 100% comfortable, if you're not adjusting as well as your other colleague is. We move at different paces, we have different comfort levels, and it takes time, right? And something that really, really inspires me for the future and really makes me proud to be a part of CIBC is there's a tons of support from our leadership. There's a lot of training and plan in place, and there's a lot of ongoing communication. Benefits, mental health increases, personal days off. We have the most beautiful working space that's just opened up this year, the CIBC Square, and just everything that they put thought and time into, like wellness rooms, prayer rooms, collaboration spaces. I think these are the things that we need to really, really be looking at for the future, and kind of having that mindset as to how are we continuing to inspire hearts and minds and really collaborate and connect with our teams, right? And at the end of the day, just showing empathy, I think it goes a long way.
Too true. Ariane?
I think Mahek has say everything, but so more transparency as well. So be able to speak out and express what your thoughts are, and if you feel comfortable or not. Around security is not only physical, it's also well-being, health and safety, include mental health. So to be more conscious about it, and to be more open as well. So I think there's definitely a movement around it. And to be more inclusive, that include also some health, mental health illness, or etc. So I think more transparency and more flexibility and openness. That's what inspired me since 2 years. I think the future workplace will be more on the hybrid model, but more on do you feel you need to connect with people? So people will connect easily in person, will go more to reach out to each other. So I think there's a lot going on and a lot of improvement for the next couple of months.
And Whitney, last words to you.
Yeah, I think I just agree with what's been stated already. I would say something that has been really inspiring about what we've felt through the pandemic with Chick-fil-A is just the level of continued care that the company has showed employees, the increase of care and flexibility and empathy around this experience, this shared experience that truly the entire world has gone through together. And I think as we move forward, keeping in mind a couple of things. One, I would say we're not through it yet. And the impact and the changes that we've experienced, we don't even know yet what those impacts are. And so having a mindset that is, we're on a journey and discovery. And so continuing the care, continuing the flexibility, continuing that empathy of we're all carrying grief and loss. And, some of us have reshaped our priorities. We've had different things change, our cadences, our rhythms. And so we're new human beings in some ways as far as what our life experience is now. And so I think having attention to that. The other thing that I hope is to stay from all of this, despite the challenge and the hardship that we've been experiencing over the last 2 years, at least in my experience, the pandemic has really caused me to slow down in a really good and healthy way, where our cultures can just be so tempted in North America to go, 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 do, fill your schedule. So that slowing down and integrating life outside of work, but work integrated really well into that, I think has been a really positive thing. And I hope that that is something that sticks around beyond now and even at the end of the pandemic.
Well, certainly I couldn't agree with you more. Well said. It really has been quite a journey. And I'd like to thank the panel for sharing your company's experiences and your personal insights and advice. It's so incredibly valuable as we go through this continuing process. And for our audience, don't go away. Join us next to celebrate achievements in campus recruitment with the announcement of award winners of the 2022 National TalentEgg Campus Recruitment Excellence Awards. You don't want to miss the excitement. So thank you for joining us.